in a theological seminary, so I'm taking many graduate courses. So many graduate courses. And the current semester just ended for me the other week. So prior to that, I was busy with finals and final projects. And one of the classes I was taking was a really great class out of the counseling program that was all about examining like familial and cultural influences from our background and learning about how those influences have shaped us. And the final project, which was intended to be just like this sort of fun and carefree way to end out the semester, was just to do like some creative something to share what you had learned about yourself over the course of the semester. So like some people baked old family recipes and they brought those in and told a story about that dish. Some people like wrote a poem about the experience or drew a picture or talked about a family tradition, something like that. It was very open-ended. So I puzzled for a little bit about what I was going to do. And with some help from my wife, Suzanne, I settled on I was going to sing a song. And the background is, every Thanksgiving when I was growing up, we would go to my grandma's house, and we would like have a traditional Thanksgiving meal, and we'd sit at the big table with all of my aunts and uncles and cousins. And my grandma would pin up on the wall this piece of paper with a song on it. And before the meal, we would sing a blessing to the tune of Edelweiss that begins, "Bless our friends, bless our food, come, O Lord, and sit with us." And I did some Googling on my memory and found the words. This appears to be a Catholic thing. I don't know if other denominations do this. It would make sense because my family was Catholic. But I thought for my final project, to honor my grandparents and to honor my Catholic heritage, I would sing this blessing for the class, and then we would all sing it together. So I got the guitar chords to Edelweiss, and I practiced it enough to be comfortable with it. A little higher than my normal range, but not too bad. And I did a run-through right through class when I was alone in the room, and I thought it sounded pretty nice. You know, I'm not the best guitarist or singer, but nice enough, and that was not the point anyway. So it was my turn to go during class. I got up in front of everyone, and I taped up the words of the blessing on the wall so everyone could see on the big sheet of paper, just like my grandma did. And I told the story of my grandma's life, how she grew up in Canada on a farm during the Great Depression, and they lost their home. She went from house to house as a child. She ran off to join the Canadian Nursing Corps during World War II because she wanted to do her duty. She became a sergeant. And then after the war, she ran off again, this time to the American Midwest, to marry a handsome American GI that she'd met at a USO dance just a few weeks before. Her parents were thrilled. And she outranked him, incidentally. But Grandma was a risk taker. And I told the class she was an inspiration to me. I told them about the Catholic blessing, and I started to play my song. Now, I was a little nervous going in. I could feel that. Because playing guitar and singing in front of a room full of my students is a little outside of my comfort zone. But sometimes nerves happen, and I recognize that, and I know how to breathe through it. So I wasn't worried about it until I started singing. And I heard the first note with my own ear, and it wasn't like a little sharp or a little flat. It was nowhere near the right key. Not even in the neighborhood of the right key. It was in its own little parallel universe, in a key of its own devising. So I heard that, and I thought, oh no, that is not good. But we can adjust. We'll just slide the next note on over to the right key. Right? We'll just slide it on over. But the next note was in a different neighborhood still. Right? It heard the first note and went, I am not sticking around for this, and went to a different zip code. So I'm going, come on, brain, you know how singing works, right? Let's just move on to the key. And it was totally not happening. Not happening. It was so bad, I did the thing that you were never supposed to do, and I just stopped. And everyone's staring at me. And I said, okay, we're going to try again. And so we tried again, and it wasn't good, but it was a little closer. And then the entire class quite mercifully began singing with me. And we got through it together, and I went back to my seat, and I tried to figure out how long would it be before I could make eye contact with any of my classmates again. And I was telling this to Suzanne later, and she's like, I'm sure it wasn't that bad. But I am here to tell you, no, it was legitimately terrible. Terrible. And at that point, I was laughing about it. And I'm actually glad that it happened, although I feel for my classmates, because it is really important to fail from time to time, and I got to fail in a very friendly and safe space, right? I was given an opportunity to fall flat on my face with minimal consequences, and those are pretty rare in life. I didn't even get a bad grade. So that experience was a gift from the universe to me. It was a free lesson in humility. And this month we are talking about humility as our worship theme. And we've discussed it from a lot of different angles. Today I wanted to talk about the humility of failure and the grace that allows us to fail. You have probably heard people say, failure is not an option. Well, guess what? Not failing is also not an option in life, because inevitably and from time to time we are going to fail. Maybe we are going to stumble just a little so that no one would even notice unless they were looking really carefully. And maybe we are going to fall flat on our face like I did. Either way, we are going to make mistakes. Now, I want to take it as a given for the rest of this discussion that when we make mistakes as responsible adults, there are certain things that then should follow, right? We should be held accountable for our mistakes. We should repair any harm if harm was done. We should make appropriate amends and offer apologies. All that stuff. We want to learn from our mistakes. We want to take steps so it doesn't happen again, right? This is not a sermon in defense of irresponsibility. So please, I am assuming that we are all taking responsible for any mistakes that we make and taking reasonable care that mistakes not happen. But then the question remains, how have we prepared ourselves spiritually to deal with the inevitability of our mistakes that we will make? For example, since the title of this service is Against Perfectionism, I thought it'd be kind of cute to put a typo in the order of service down in the sermon title, right? Oh, that'd be cute. That'd be fun. See if anyone catches it. And then Saturday night, way after the bulletin had already been printed and it was too late to do anything about it, I realized that no, I had made an actual mistake in the order of service, right? Because I had put the singing the children out in completely the wrong place. And imagine my horror when I realized that I had not made a pretend mistake, I had made an actual mistake. And what did I feel in that moment? Well, I felt embarrassed. I felt a little bit of shame. I felt a moment of panic trying to calculate, can I get the order of service reprinted Saturday morning? Can I throw out 100 printed orders of service and waste all of that ink and paper? What do I do here? And then I laughed and realized that, again, the universe, bless its heart, was giving me another free lesson in humility, and perfectly appropriate for this service on imperfection, this service against perfectionism. Little did I know that the sound would also go out for half of the service. So many lessons today. So I want to talk about humility in the face of our inevitable mistakes, and on the flip side, I want to talk about perfectionism. Perfectionism is not the same as high standards, right? I have very high standards for what we do here in worship, and it's good to have high standards. It's good to take pride in what we do. It's good to serve people well. It's good to bring beauty into the world, right? And to take care of the people around us. So perfectionism is not about high standards. It's about impossible standards. Perfectionism manifests itself as an excessively critical attitude towards ourselves or others that does not allow for error, human or otherwise, or anything less than 110% achievement of a goal. Perfectionism may disguise itself as being about high standards, as wanting the very best for everyone, or just caring so darn much. But in the end, perfectionism is really about control. It's about a belief that we can be in control and remain in control, such that nothing that we did not intend can enter our zone of perfect control. Not dust, or dirty handprints, not a single wayward dog hair, no typos, no wrinkles, no rust, no unruly children. No missed appointments, quotas, calls, or monthly team goals. No skipped workouts, no dirty dishes, no dropped balls, no wrong notes, no dangling participles. As such, like many controlling behaviors, perfectionism often comes from a place of anxiety. Because when we're feeling anxious or out of control generally, or in one very important sphere of our life, we can often grab onto some other sphere of our life where we can attempt to impose control as a coping mechanism, right? This could be our appearance, our household, our job, our parenting. And this is not a great anxiety management strategy because perfectionism does not diminish anxiety, it feeds it. And we're not actually in control of any of those things that I mentioned, our appearance, our household, our job, our parenting. So when those mistakes happen, that anxiety is just augmented, and it's like a vicious cycle. And sometimes our attempted sphere of control, our coping mechanism, is not in our own life, it's in someone else's life, right? So we become excessively critical of our children, for example, because we have projected the anxiety that we are feeling about our aging bodies or our insecure retirement onto their grades. Or we can become excessively critical of our partner's television watching habits because we are feeling anxiety about a project at our job and we're projecting that onto them. And you're saying, wait, are you saying we can have our own very high standards for how someone else spends their leisure time? Yes, indeed we can. It's a thing that happens. Sometimes perfectionism reflects not our own impossible standards, but someone else's, right? We can internalize an excessively critical voice of a parent, a partner, a boss, a teacher, or a composite voice we have shaped out of our generally anxious culture. Of course, marketers want you to experience anxiety about a great many things, mostly regarding yourself, because they have a product to sell you to fix each and every flaw that they have so graciously helped you to identify. And 'tis the season for that, is it not? And then perfectionism becomes this like inner tyrant that we are always trying to placate, whose voice we are always trying to silence. But we never can completely silence that voice because we're human and impossible standards are impossible. We will never silence that voice by meeting its impossible standards. In thinking about the tyranny of the inner critic, our internalized voice, I'm reminded that when our Universalist ancestors first suggested that everyone goes to heaven, it was considered not just wrong, it was considered as an attack on the very foundations of society. Because if no one was threatened with eternal punishment, the argument went, why would anyone ever be good? Why not lie, cheat, steal, murder, and on and on and on? This always seemed like a strange argument to me, as the person is essentially confessing that they go about their day like suppressing the urge to lie, cheat, steal, murder, etc., just because of the threat of punishment. And I don't think that accurately describes the inner world of most people. And for anyone who it does, the threat of hell never mattered much anyway. We are most of us good inasmuch as we are good, willingly and intentionally, not like begrudgingly and under threat of punishment. And I think for some people who have internalized that wrathful God of punishment as an inner voice that delights to point out their every flaw and imperfection and holds up impossible standards, there can be that kind of similar fear of letting go of it. Like, if I don't pass judgment on myself, then who will? And if not, then what happens next? What on earth might I let myself do if I were not driving and critiquing myself every moment of the day? Would I still bring it at work? Would I be as good a partner or a parent? Would I even get out of bed at all? In other words, sometimes we're not coming from a place of trust that allows us to be relaxed and easygoing with our own self and says that we can kind of unclench that internal fist and let go of that internal tyrant and trust that there's something beautiful and natural that will still come through us. But whether perfectionism appears as an internalized hypercriticalness or an externalized anxiety, it not only has the capacity to make our lives needlessly miserable, it's antithetical to us doing our best work and leading our best lives. And this is because perfectionism discourages us from risk-taking and exploration and innovation. Perfectionism is terrified of failure. So it encourages us to stay with the safe and the known, where we can feel in control and like we are assured of outcomes. So as in our story of Befana, it encourages us to stay inside, sweeping away at all of these little perceived imperfections, rather than starting off on some new unknown adventure where things might get very messy. Perfectionism leads to missed opportunities. There's a saying, don't make the perfect the enemy of the good. We can be so focused on doing the best thing, the perfect thing, that we miss a chance to do a good thing. We can be so insistent on doing a thing perfectly that we refuse to do it at all. But there are many beautiful things that are worth doing, knowing full well that they won't be done perfectly. For example, let's consider our religious community itself. What an audacious undertaking this is, to invite people from all kinds of different theologies and backgrounds together into one space to worship together and to reflect together and to celebrate together. That is a beautiful thing. It is also a hard thing and an imperfect thing. Sometimes our conversations get messy. Sometimes we need different things. We definitely use different language. Sometimes what speaks to my neighbor spiritually or religiously does not speak to me at all. And so we're figuring out how to do this thing together, and it is an ever-evolving and imperfect thing. And it's also a beautiful thing. We've seen this even more so in the conversation that we have had as a community over the last several years around what it means to be a truly welcoming community. This is a big part, this is part of a very big conversation that is happening all around Unitarian Universalism that looks at how things like racism and homophobia and transphobia, sexism and ableism function in UU spaces and function in ourselves, and how we can challenge these things and heal from these things and live more deeply into the fundamental commitment of our faith to uphold the inherent worth and dignity of every person. And we've had these difficult conversations, and they are hard and messy conversations. In fact, if there's one thing that I have learned from doing anti-racism work, it is that you have to let go at the very beginning of any attachment that you have to getting it right or doing it perfect. Because it is inevitable that you are going to make mistakes, say the wrong thing, do the wrong thing, be awkward, feel awkward, make someone angry at you. And you are going to discover things about yourself that challenge any notion that you may have of your own specialness, spiritually speaking, because we're all caught up in this, right? So it's hard work. It's always done very imperfectly, but it is work that touches the core of our faith, and it's a beautiful thing that we do. There's a Japanese art called kintsugi, which means golden repair. When a ceramic item breaks, you drop it and it shatters into all those pieces. The kintsugi technique is used to piece it back together by applying a golden lacquer to the edge of each piece and sealing it back into its form. And the result is a restored teapot or dish or whatever it is, with a spiderweb of gold now running all over its surface. Since any ceramic object breaks in different and unpredictable ways, each object created by the art of kintsugi is unique and unrepeatable, beautiful and still perfectly functional as whatever it is, a dish or a plate, but now also a beautiful object of art. Islamic scholar Omid Safi writes of the art of kintsugi, "We value success and wholeness. Unlike this Japanese art form, we don't yet have a way of looking for what was once broken and has been healed and illuminated. How lovely," he says, "would it be to find that a cracked and illuminated cup can be even more beautiful than a whole cup. How wise to realize that broken hearts, illuminated and made whole, can be even lovelier." The goal in our life as a religious community, like the goal in our individual lives, is not to always get it right. It is to be resilient and adaptive in the face of our mistakes. And perfectionism is neither resilient nor adaptive. It wastes resources trying to ensure perfection. It falls to pieces or blows up in anger when perfection is not achieved. What we are really wanting is humility. Humility that understands and accepts our limitations as a fundamental part of our humanness. Humility that can acknowledge our errors with grace and humor. Grace and humor do lead to resilience and adaptivity. To quote Samuel Beckett's famous line, "Ever tried, ever failed, no matter. Try again, fail better." Grace and humor give us the space as individuals and as a community to try again, and to fail better. Because sometimes it is precisely out of the places of our stumbling, our error, our uncomfortableness, that surprise and possibility emerge. Sometimes it is the golden edges of our brokenness that hold us together in beauty. As the great Leonard Cohen once sang, "Ring the bells that still can ring. Forget your perfect offering. There's a crack in everything. That's how the light gets in." Blessed be, and amen.